Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. My name is Saimah and welcome to Saimah's Experience. In this video, I'm going to go over some of the tricks that car dealers use that could potentially fool you into paying a bit more for these vehicles than you really should be. And trust me, especially these days, nobody needs to be paying a single penny more than what the prices of these overinflated vehicles already are. So now more than ever, it's extremely important that you know some of the things to look out for when you walk into the dealership working on negotiating the car price. So these are going to be very important. I have some notes here and I want to make sure I cover everything in a lot of detail. So there's going to be about 4 to 5 major things that we're going to go over. These are things that I've experienced myself. I've had over 40 cars on the platform, so I'm definitely not new to buying cars, but these are some of the things that I've experienced, and I'm going to go over exactly what you can say and do to kind of, get them to play fair with you and get the best deal on your car. Now, first off, of course, when you buy a car, you need to have a certain credit score and qualification as a buyer. And oftentimes what I find happens is when you go into the dealer, unless you're like in the 780s, 750 and above, it's really hard to refute that that's not a good credit score. But typically, if you're somewhere in the mid 600s to 700, they can definitely come back to you and say, oh, you know what? I'm so sorry, but your credit isn't spectacular, which means you may be qualifying for a higher interest on the loan. And this is very interesting. So this is so important to note because a couple of extra percentage points on a loan can actually end up being thousands of dollars over the life of your loan. So while it may not seem that much on your monthly payment, but in the grand scheme of things, you're going to be paying thousands more. So it's worth it to take note and understand what your credit score is and what your buying power is before you walk into the dealership, so you're equipped with the right tools, and most importantly, so that you're confident in your buying power and you can push back. Now, you want to utilize some amazing tools that are at your disposal to understand where you stand before you go in. The first one is creditkarma.com. Go there. I use it all the time, and you can get a free credit report. You can check on your credit score almost every single day, and it is fairly accurate. It may not be 100% to the exact score that maybe a dealership will pull, but it is going to definitely give you a good idea of what your credit score is, and it's totally free. And then another thing that I love doing is NerdWallet has this amazing car affordability calculator. And again, I'm going to drop all these links down in the description below so that you can utilize these tools. NerdWallet does a great job at taking this calculator. You can input your credit score that you're going to get from Credit Karma. You're going to input the amount of the car that you're thinking about buying, and it's going to more or less give you an idea of what the APR should be based on your qualifications and what you should be paying more or less. This is going to give you a good ballpark range that you're going to have in your hands when you walk into a dealership. That way you know where you should land. Oftentimes I think people end up paying more than they should because they just don't know where they stand, and it's really important to understand this so that you don't get ripped off. Now, one of the things that I notice is that sometimes you'll go in there and they're like, oh, well, because of your credit score, you're going to have to pay, a 4.5% APR, right? Which is a little bit on the high side. And you can definitely negotiate that APR down. Now, oftentimes when dealers work with lenders, they make money on being able to charge you a little bit more on the APR. So let's say they ran your credit report for a car that you're looking to buy. The lender comes back and says, this person qualifies for a 3.5% APR. Well, the dealer can come back and try to sell you on a loan that has a 4.5% APR, and they could earn the difference on that between what the lender is offering and what they're able to sell you on. So it's an income stream for them, and as a consumer, you really shouldn't have to pay for that. So go in there being informed and knowing exactly where you stand. Now, you can say things to them like, you know, can you do a credit tier bump for me? Can you bump me up into the next credit tier so that my APR comes down? And when I've said that in the past, it has really worked in my favor. And I think it also lets them know that you kind of know more or less what you're doing. Now, you don't have to walk in there and ever say what your credit score is or what you know you qualify for. You can definitely hold those cards close to you, but that's going to give you the confidence that you need to talk them down on those APR rates so that you don't end up paying thousands more over the lifespan of the loans. That's very important, so you want to watch out for that. Now, speaking of interest rates, this is going to get into our next point where dealerships can potentially fool you and trick you into paying more. And that is something called a money factor, right? And a money factor, or it's abbreviated for MF, is what you see on a lease contract. Now, I know many of you Turo hosts, you will lease your Turo vehicle. So on a lease contract, you often won't see what the APR is because instead it's shown as the money factor, right? And in other words, that just means what the APR rate, the interest rate is on your loan for the lease. This is something that you want to watch out for if you can't get them down to the payment that you're looking for. So basically, to understand the money factor, let's say you look at your lease contract and they show the money factor as 0.00150. What you want to do is take that money factor and multiply it by 2,400. Now, in this example, if you take 0.00150 times it by 2,400, that's going to give you an APR of 3.6%. And you want to more or less know what the going market rate on auto loan interest rates is before you walk into the dealership, because that's going to give you an idea of whether or not that's really high or really low, and if you're getting a good deal or not. Now, I love to use bankrate.com because on Bankrate, they will oftentimes have updated data on what the average rates are based on your credit score. And again, I'll put that link down in the description. But this is really important if you're going into a lease and you can't get them to get you the lease payment that you're looking for. That money factor is a point of negotiation. But in order to know how much more you need to negotiate it, you need to again multiply it by 2,400 to get the APR rate to where we can comprehend it and to where it makes sense. So you want to make sure that that's an area where you're not getting taken advantage of. Now, for me personally, whenever I go into doing a car deal for Turo, I usually don't look at this stuff, and I try to keep my process as simple as possible. I go into a dealership knowing exactly what my car payment has to be based on what it's going to yield me in the Turo marketplace and what my margins have to be. Now, I only utilize these tools if they cannot get me down to the payment that I'm looking for. So I go in and it's a very non-emotional transaction. And typically my little spiel to the dealer is, look, this is a mathematical equation for me. It's just purely based on my budget. And this is the absolute bottom line of where I need to be on my payment. If you can get me there, fantastic. Adjust whatever it is that you have to adjust. Get me to that number. And if you can't, I completely understand and I'm ready to walk away from this because again, this is a non-emotional mathematical decision. And if they really fight me on it, then I got to pull my bag of tools out and be like, okay, let's see, what is this interest rate you're charging me? Can we negotiate that? What's the APR? What tier credit are you placing me in? Where can we work on this? So those are some of the tools that I love to use and typically works out very well. Now, number 3, placing your focus on the total cost of the car versus the monthly payment. Oftentimes, dealers will try to divert your attention into focusing on what that monthly payment is going to be and not on the total cost of the car. And that is very dangerous territory because they can keep the cost of the car high, they can fix in a lot of stuff, and to you, they'll sell it as, oh, well, the monthly payment is where you need it to be. Or if you want to add on this extra or this warranty, it's only an extra $6 a month. It's only an extra $15 a month. No big deal, but that's how that begins to add up. And before you know it, you're making a ton of money. You're paying a ton of money for that car, and you don't want to do that. So when you walk into a dealership, focus on getting the total cost of the car as low as you possibly can, because that's going to bring your monthly payments down, and that's the goal. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Let's say you personally know that you're looking for a monthly payment of $100 per month, right? And you don't have to reveal this to the dealer. If they ask you, what monthly payment are you comfortable with? You can simply say, I don't know, and have them run the numbers, and then you work from there. So let's say you're comfortable with $100 per month. The cost of the vehicle that you're looking at is $7,200. But because you didn't focus on the cost of the car and you tell the dealer, hey, I want to be at $100 per month, they'll say, okay, great. We will sell you this car at a 72-month term, which is 6 years, for $100 a month. So for 72 months, you'll pay $100 per month, and your total for the car is going to be $7,200 plus taxes, fees, licensing, and any interest rate that you pay on top of that. Versus going in and saying, hey, you know, what can we do to work on the total cost of this car? So let's say the car is $7,200 and you talk them down to $6,000. Now you will still end up at $100 per month over the term of 60 months, which is 5 years. So you shorten the amount of time that you're paying that loan off from 6 years to 5 years, and you saved yourself $1,200 because you brought the cost of the car down. So that's where you make the difference. That's where it really adds up, and you have to be very careful, because oftentimes if you tell them, hey, like, this is a monthly payment that I'm comfortable at, all they're doing is stretching out the amount of time that it's going to take you to pay off that loan, right? They can go from 60 months to 72 months to 80 months. They can do these crazy long payback terms, and you don't want to be stuck in a car for that 6 years, probably has a ton of miles on it, lots of maintenance issues, and you're still making payments on that car when you could have just negotiated the price of that car down, paid it off in a shorter time frame and for less money. And remember, the longer the payoff period is, the more years and months that you stretch it over, the more you're paying in interest, and it literally adds up to thousands and thousands of dollars. So you don't want to do that. You want to save yourself from taking on that much cost. Now, of course, there are fees and stuff that you can't avoid. So really quick, people ask about this all the time. Things like sales tax, title, and registration. That's stuff that is just sort of standard that you can't really negotiate. But if you ever see things on a contract such as advertising fees or loan payment fees or market adjustment fees, things like that that don't really make sense, those are things that you really shouldn't be paying for. And if you catch them, ask them, hey, we need to get rid of these bogus fees because I'm not trying to pay for this stuff, right? Bring the cost of the car as low as you possibly can. Then let's talk about number 4, which is trade-in and trade-in values. Let's say you have a car that you're ready to get out of and you're going and want to get into a new car. It's not usually the best bet to take that car into the dealer and have them trade it in so that you can get your new car, because oftentimes you won't get the best value on that car, because you have to remember they have overhead and they have cost of doing business. They have to employ someone to take that car, evaluate it, pay you out. Then they have to flip it back and sell it, right? Whether it's at auction or on their own lot. And there's costs associated with that. And plus they need to make money on top of that. So if you take a trade-in, you are most likely not going to get the best value for it. So what I like to do is often, sell it elsewhere, sell it either privately or through another company that buys vehicles. Like, I love using Vroom, and there's so many online companies these days, and then go into the dealer. So a trade-in is probably a card that you don't want to play. It doesn't always work in your favor. Now, there is another scenario where they can give you a fantastic deal on your trade-in, right? They'll give you great value. Maybe before you leave the house, you run the KBB on it, you get to the dealership just to see what they're gonna give you. And it's like, whoa, they're beating what KBB is showing that my car is worth. But sometimes they'll do that to make the deal look sweet, and then they're not really giving you a great deal on the new car that you're getting into. And it doesn't quite offset the excess amount that you're paying in the new car. So you want to be very careful when it comes to trade-in, because you're typically not going to get the best value from the dealer that you're purchasing with. Again, just for logical reasons, right? Because they have costs, they got to flip it around, and they got to make money. So it makes sense, right? If I were a business, I would probably do the same thing too. So that's something that you want to be careful about and avoid. Now, when it comes to down payments, down payments are absolutely not necessary. I've made another video about this, so you guys can definitely take a look at it. But in this video, I'm going to talk about down payment for leases. Down payments for leases are typically almost never necessary. And that's the whole point of leasing. The whole point of leasing is to have very low upfront costs. But if a dealer is asking for a hefty down payment on a lease, it defeats the purpose. You might as well finance a car if, depending on what your goals are, of course. But here's the thing. If you're leasing a car and they're asking for $4,000 or $5,000 down, you gotta say no, that you don't want to make a down payment. The reason for this is, say you drive the car off the lot and God forbid you get into an accident, car gets totaled. That down payment that you made goes towards absolutely nothing. It's just a complete loss for you. So why would you do it? Now, let's say in some crazy scenario, a down payment is absolutely necessary, kind of like the markets that we're in today, where there is such a huge shortage in supply. Dealers are extremely competitive and they're not really budging and willing to negotiate, and they know they can get that down payment because there's just so much demand for their cars. Well, let's say it's an absolute must in order for you to acquire that car. One of the things that you want to do is discuss having them roll that down payment into your monthly payments. The reason for that is, if you make the entire down payment up front, you're also going to have to pay taxes on it right away. So that's again going to increase your costs. But if you roll the down payment into your payments over the span of the lease, then it's going to help you pay it off slowly and also pay the taxes slowly over time too, keeping your upfront costs low. So that's something that you want to think about. And then the last point that I want to cover, which may seem a little bit random, and most people probably won't encounter this, but I have encountered this, so I think that it's important to take note of this, especially because our markets are incredibly weird these days. And so you want to be careful, because you never know what games are being played out there. And that is called something called spot delivery. Spot delivery is when they let you drive off the lot with the car without all the loan docs really being finalized with the lender, the person or the bank that is financing this vehicle for you. And believe me, this has happened, and I was extremely angry when this went down. I purchased a Corvette C7 one time. The dealership seemed super cool. I got approved through financing. I forget which bank it was with, but the APR rates looked good. All was well. And they're like, hey, listen, you know what? It's late in the day. Go ahead, take the car, and then we can go ahead and finish up the loan docs the following day. Well, what happened was the following day, or a couple of days later, actually, I received all the information in the mail, and they had bait and switched me. And it went from the original bank that I thought I was being financed through with a different APR to then being Bank of America, and the APR was like 2 percentage points higher. And it was insane. I've never seen anything like it. It meant that I was going to end up paying more over the life of the loan, and the dealership was just absolutely shady and horrible. And so that was a very bad experience. So the moral of the story is, if you get approved for a car, do not take the car off the lot until all your documents are finalized, everything is signed with the lender, so that there's no bait and switch taking place after the fact. So this is really important, and you want to keep track of that. All right, you guys, this is my little spiel on tricks that dealerships will use to fool you. These are things that you really want to avoid. And of course, times are changing, right? A lot of people are not always using dealerships as a primary way to buy anymore. There's so many great online companies such as Vroom and Carvana and Shift where you can find great deals from, and even brands like Tesla where all the buying is done online. But I think dealerships are still going to stick around at least for some time. And if you're still buying cars on the lot, these are things that you want to pay attention to. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you like this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I look forward to talking to you guys in the comment section, and smash that like button if you found some value in this. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you real soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.